Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from central British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, oh, we know where Canada is. In British Columbia on the West Coast, right? Right. And so that's where we are, and it's a beautiful day. And today we have a very, very interesting guest and a very special guest. It is Lannette West. Lannette had a world paying attention to a single mom from North Carolina have her breakout appearance on HBO Max and TLC MILF Manor. And we talk about that part. I love it. And here's a picture of Lannette. You're beautiful, Lannette. I can say that as somebody 85 years old, although I still appreciate beautiful women like yourself, and I can say that, and I say that with caution, obviously. But I'm very glad to have you on my show. Well, most viewers are, the American Mom Next Door. She has a series has begun open up about other struggles that she had on victories, strong women, and have helped others. And so you've had your challenges, and I believe you have two children.
I do.
And
Yes.
so tell us all about yourself, Lannette, starting with where did it all start, and then as you went forward, and obviously you were on HBO Max and then on TLC. Tell us all about it. How did it all happen, and how did you start out at the beginning and went from there in North Carolina?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me, John. It is absolutely a privilege to be here. So thank you. And jumping back to the beginning, I'm originally from Western North Carolina. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains. I went to college at UNC Chapel Hill, and I just stayed in this general area ever since. And I was just living my life, working in IT, which is what I've done for about 30 years now. And I got this random message on Facebook. It came through as a message request because I wasn't friends with the young lady. And she said, "Would you be interested in auditioning for a reality TV show?" And I was like, "Huh?" She's like,
Yeah,
"Wait, yeah." I'm like, "Where did that come from?" I this
exactly.
wasn't something I solicited. It's not something I looked for, but she's like, "I like your look. I've looked over your page, and I think you would be a good fit." So that's where it all started, and I really thought it was a scam, so I didn't take it very seriously until I talked to the casting director out of LA at E1 Entertainment, and then I realized, oh shit, this is real.
Exactly. And so, what was the show?
Now, initially, I think it's important to point out we were told that the name of the show was Northern Love. It was being filmed up north of Toronto, so it made sense.
Oh,
Northern Love,
in
right?
Canada.
Yeah, it was filmed up in Barrie, Ontario, so
Okay.
a little north of Toronto. And we were told that was the name of the show. Had no idea it was MILF Manor until we were in Toronto the day before filming started. A producer came in and said, "Hey, don't you want to know what show you're on?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" I was like, "Did the show change?" And they said, "You're on MILF Manor, season 2."
And so, MILF Manor means mothers I would like to fuck.
Yes, that
And
is what that
so
acronym.
that's what it is, and just for our guests watching us from around the world. And
Mhm.
so take us a bit further though. So then you got so there you were casted. You were in north of Toronto. At what point did you figure out that the title was a little bit different than you initially thought it would be? And
It was
saying,
that yeah, it was that day before filming started, I kind of panicked, and I thought my first thought was, "Oh my god, I'm gonna get fired." Like, my company is not going to endorse this at all, but
yeah,
thankfully, I work for a very progressive Southern California liberal company, and so they didn't even bat an eye, but that was my first concern. My second
yeah,
concern was, what are my kids.
yeah. And so how did that all work out for you? So as you said, the company you work for very liberal, and so I have no issues with saying mothers I like to fuck. That is very commonly said, not overly commonly, but it's not uncommon. So,
Right.
so how did it go with? How old are your kids?
At the time, my daughter was 17, turning 18,
Oh,
and my son was 20, 27, turning 28. So,
so what
yeah,
did they
they're
think about the show?
well. I think my son
Lukewarm?
really did. Yeah, my son was like, "Whatever, mom. Like, you're crazy. You'll do whatever. Like, I'm not even interested." I think my daughter watched a few of the shows. She had one point encouraged me to do it because I was kind of getting frustrated with the process and said, "I think
Yeah,
I'm just going to back out." And she
yeah,
was like, "Mom, how many people have a chance to do this? You might as well try it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?"
exactly. Yeah, but it's the worst that can happen, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was overall, a very positive experience. I left the show early, spoiler alert. Under duress, I was a little pissed off and a little emotional, so I had quite the dramatic exit, which, it is what it is.
So that being said, then, so that happened there. So
Mhm.
where did you go from there in terms of your job and your career that you already had concerns about? You said, but they were very liberal and moved forward. Tell us about the company that you worked for at that particular point.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't even a blip on their radar screen. I had taken vacation time. I had lots and lots of PTO, paid time off. So I just utilized my vacation time and I came back and went right back to work as if nothing had happened.
Right,
And it's important also to point out that we filmed the show in September of 2023. It was in post production for about 9 months and didn't come out until the end of April 2024.
right.
So after filming, I just, came right back and assumed my normally, regularly scheduled life. And that's what I did until the show aired.
Interesting. So, did it have any further follow up in any other way? So now you're in the picture of Hollywood filmmaking, and in regards to you have your person there, your ability to be in a show. Did other shows follow that once you're in the picture? That they're always looking for people, and movies are very, very much done now, even in Vancouver, Victoria, and we have a place in North Saanich. Very frequently, Hollywood is filming movies there of different sorts, I guess. It's not quite as active as it used to be in terms of filmmaking. It has changed likely, so has your career gone further in filming on different areas or not really?
No, there have been a couple opportunities, but they just weren't a good fit. And I've just really resumed my life as your average, normal, middle aged or over middle aged single mom. So I'm an empty nester for the first time in my life. So life has taken a bit of a turn. But yeah, I'm just living a normal life other than doing some podcasts and sharing my story in hopes that, other people can relate and find some inspiration in it. That's really all I do. I live kind of a normal, boring life, and I kind of like it.
But so where do you live now then, Lynette?
I'm in Cary, North Carolina, which is a suburb of Raleigh, which is the
Okay.
state capital. Hmm.
Yeah, North Carolina is very beautiful. Actually,
Yeah,
we do some business in the United States. I've been there a couple of times, and
nice.
it's very, very interesting. So the other part is you had some challenges in your early life, as a lot of
Mhm.
us do. Share with us some of the challenges that you went through, either in your schooling or in the early
Mhm.
parts of your life that were a bit of a challenge for you.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I mean, there's so much, I won't touch on all of it. I'll just suffice to say there was a lot of childhood trauma and mistreatment. from a very early age. Everything from sexual abuse to physical abuse to emotional abuse. And that sort of perpetuated itself throughout my life until I got to a point where I guess I was kind of ready to deal with it, unpack it, and heal it. And tying back in the show real quick, I left the show after a very dramatic, basically mental breakdown. I just totally decomposed. So a lot of people had reached out and they were like, why are you doing this? Why did you freak out? Why did you completely lose your shit on the show? And part of that is I kind of wanted to give people a little insight into my background because there is a why behind everything, especially unusual behavior. There is a why, and I think it's important to understand the whys and be compassionate to the whys. So, my whys were that, as a young child, I was never treated very well, and so that tended to show up in my adult life in the kinds of behaviors I tolerated from people around me, and it perpetuated some very dysfunctional behaviors of my own. And so, all of that kind of evolved into a substance abuse disorder. I had, a problem with cocaine for many years. And I'm happy to report I'm 3 years clean as of October 23rd. So that's been an obstacle that I feel that I've overcome. Not that I ever, relax. I am always vigilant because addiction is a terrible disease and it's an awful affliction. But I guess I just wanted people to know that bad things can happen to you and you're more than what's happened to you. That you can still find a guiding light in this world. There's still hope and there's still some happiness on the other side. I guess I wanted people to know that because I've lived
See, what is important, I believe, Lannette, and I've gone through in my 85 years through all kinds of things. I was born in northeastern Holland
that. Hmm.
in November the 1st, 1940, just before the
Hmm.
war started, and it affected our family, affected everything around me, and saw far too much that we should not have seen, and still have PTSD as a result, still got counseling for issues with the inner child that I
Hmm.
didn't even know what it was until it was recognized in some counseling that we did
Hmm.
with my now wife in the early stage when we were going through difficulties. And, the counselor recognized that and said to us, although the issues were not that, he said, I want to have a discussion with John on his own about this issue, the inner child. And so that,
Hmm.
and so, uh, we agreed that that should happen. And so, very, very emotional, but it's something
Hmm.
that I never realized, so, and some of the things that I went through in the early stages that affected the rest of my life until the counseling. And so it is important for me, the other part, to share that with others because
Hmm.
it is issues that people sometimes, as you indicated, are reluctant to talk about because it makes then creates a negative effect about me or something like that, which is not the case because most people go through difficulty and sharing it with others can be very, very helpful. The other part is that for me, academically, I was not very successful. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And so they said to my parents, at 12 and a half years old, they said, what are you going to do with this guy? And said, well, maybe send him to the mentally challenged school. And said, no, we're not going to do that. So let's try to. My dad had a friend that had a furniture factory and said, and teachers at that point, and I love teachers. My youngest daughter is a teacher actually, and I love what they
Hmm.
did, but they were not very knowledgeable about some of the other neurodiversity issues and other complications that people have that were not really dealt with in those days all that much. So teachers kind of looked at me and saying, well, John isn't too bright, he will not amount to much in terms of a career. It's so best to get a labor job of some sort. And
Mm.
so at 12 and a half years old, became a laborer. And I loved it, and I'm proud of that today. And it took me until 1997 until actually I went into a store and I picked up a book, and I have the actual book here that changed my life. And a couple of things happened is that on April that, and this takes me back to Holland and some of the things that happened there. On April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army, and it
Mhm.
made such an impression on me that I knew as I grew up I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada, and I did when I was 24, and so and that's where I have been now for the last 60 years, and it is always important for me. The next week is Liberation Day and
Mhm.
Remembrance Day in particular, on the 11th month of the 11th day. And I usually try to go to one or two or three different schools and talk about why the 2 minutes of silence, why is it important, and why should we appreciate what we have, and what does it all mean. And I will be doing that next Wednesday, actually, to one of the schools here, and I feel I have an obligation to do that.
Mhm.
Is what did it mean to me? I was there, and those things are important. And then the other part, bringing us back to my book here, and of the
Mhm.
issues that played a major role in my life, is that I went to a bookstore here, and I picked up a book, and this is the actual book that I picked up. It's Driven to Distraction, and it's
Mhm.
written by Dr. Halliwell, and is a medical doctor and a professor, very well known around the world, has written 18 books, 5 on
Wow.
distraction. And
Mm.
and as I went through the book, I still don't know why I picked up this one. This is the actual book that I picked up in 1997. And
Mhm.
so it's about ADHD and dyslexia.
Mhm.
And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book, this is what I wrote in it. And I wrote it in Dutch because it was implied in a way that it is a mental disorder potentially,
Mhm.
which it isn't obviously, but at that
Mhm.
point. And so I wrote in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. And that was January 1997. And so the more I found out about ADHD and dyslexia, the more I started to realize that it is a superpower, and
Mhm.
it means that you have certain qualities that makes you very good at some things, not so good obviously at attention
Mhm.
and sitting in school bank for 4 years. And it took me 5 years before I would go to my doc that delivered our
Mhm.
2 daughters and was a personal friend. And he said to me, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we checked it out, and I do. And I was 62 already then. And I had gone through all these issues from the World War II, no food, and no, and all those far too much that we should not have seen, and then
Mhm.
obviously going through the school years and challenges there, and then I
Mhm.
felt I had to start all over again anew, and I had the dream of going to Canada, and I wanted to start with nothing. And then,
Mhm.
my grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber, and so
Mhm.
I left when I was 24, and I had a suitcase. I had 3 books, 2 sets of
Mhm.
clothes, and then I wanted to go to British Columbia, and couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have any money, and didn't have a job. And flew into
Wow.
Montreal and to the
Okay.
airport, then took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way. Anyway, came to Vancouver, came off the train, and then I went to the immigration department, and I couldn't speak English, so fortunately there was a German fellow. I could speak some German. So I told him I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George, 500 miles north, 800 kilometers. That's where I am today. And so I did 12, 13 hours with the Greyhound station. I was the Greyhound bus, and I came on. I can still see where the Greyhound station used to be. I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. And but I did have though attitude, even through all the ups and downs in my own little world. I was always positive. I always believed that I was just as good as all the others. And then the other one, passion, that whatever I do, I give it 125%. And work ethic is that even still today at 85, I work harder than anybody else. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And I did build my lumber mill and a whole lot of other things, and so. But the point that I'm trying to make is this one, Lannette, is that I feel, and now at 85, but when I found out about ADHD and dyslexia, that I have an obligation to share that with others, because the frequency of occurrence much broader and wider with neurodiversity issues than it is, and not much is talked about it. I feel I have an obligation to do that. And so I do in my podcast, not solely about that, but also about other issues. And, I enjoy it. And obviously by now, we know that ADHD in particular. Now, the interesting part about this one is that with ADHD, you're my podcast number 487. For all those people watching us on my On the Brink podcast, my podcast number 203 is with Dr. Hollywell, actually. And can you believe it? And so, and so as we had a discussion, and with Dr. Halliwell, that I thought the frequency of occurrence maybe was initially between 6 and 10%, but then the more I read about it, I thought it's much higher than that. So Dr. Halliwell is the expert, so I suggested to him it's probably closer to 20%. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him on ADHD. Wow. The other part that I thought was important is that in all the things that I've done, is all the business that I have, and a lot of people that I met, a lot of board of directors. I met a lot of people that are very successful in business, and not only in business, but business and successful. Whatever reason, is that those that are very successful, and the operative is successful, is that I believe I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably 75%. I agree with him. And so again, the point, Lannette, is what you were saying earlier, is that I believe it is important for people around the world, not just North America, not just Canada or the United States, but around the world, have similar issues that they have gone through, either trauma or whatever has happened that has made their journey difficult and challenging. I believe it is encouraging for a lot of them, but even if it were some of them, that we can help in making their journey understandable and being able to reconcile it, because we are all unique and we are all special, in my view. And I believe that is very important. And that's why I do what I do, and I hope you do what you do.
Mm-hmm. That is exactly what I do and why I do it. I want people to ask themselves, why do I do the things I do? Why do I behave the way I behave? Why do I think the way I think? And look at that and try to understand that, because once you start understanding it, you can heal some of that pain, because otherwise you're just oblivious moving through the world. You could be destroying things along the way. I know I was, until I gained that understanding about myself. and understood, okay, so the pain is driving this behavior, or the inner child who's been neglected is driving this behavior. And it just gives a lot of insight, and hopefully it gives people hope that there is a better outcome on the
So that when you started realizing that point and
other.
then went forward, what did you do that changed it?
Well, interestingly enough, I think the biggest thing that altered my life in a positive way was my addiction to cocaine.
Right.
I know this is going to sound very strange, but I am forever grateful. I'm grateful for that experience. I'm grateful I didn't die. I'm grateful I didn't get arrested. I'm grateful, all the bad things didn't happen to me. I was very lucky. But in recovery was where I started doing the real work of peeling back the layers of who I was and why I was in so much pain. And that whole process of really just being at my absolute lowest. I mean, coming out of rehab, that's pretty low. And so, but at that time, I knew intrinsically that everything was up from there. I just had a built-in desire and knowledge that things were going to be better. And that's what I set out to do, make things better. And there were some obstacles along the way. I mean, healing and progress is never a straight line, right? It's, you take two steps forward, take one step back. Sometimes you sidestep a few times, and sometimes you have to get yourself back on track. But I think the real key there is just having a desire to understand who you are, why you do the things you do, and understand that so that you can be the best version of yourself going forward.
So, did you have counseling to help you in the
Mhm.
process?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, my rehab experience, we called it trauma camp because there really wasn't a lot about rehab that was going on there. It was all just unpacking your trauma and figuring out why you're so hurt and who hurt you and figuring out how to heal that. And once I started doing that work with a psychiatrist and with a therapist, I mean, my life just improved exponentially. I mean, I had, more of a sense of self. I had more of a sense of admiration for myself, which had never existed prior to that. And I had a calmness about my spirit that I had never had. So again, if I hadn't gotten addicted, I wouldn't have had the privilege of going through all of that progress and therapy and rebirth. So for that reason, I'm very grateful for that whole
So,
experience.
I believe you said you've been clean since for 3 years, since October
Mhm.
3 years ago.
Mhm.
And then the other
Right.
part that I just wanted to talk about a little bit, you have
Mhm.
a son and a daughter, 17 and
Mhm.
24, I believe. So what
Right. Right.
you mind sharing their first name with our guests around the world? Just the
Sure.
first name?
Sure. Yes, my son is 28. His name is Sheldon,
Okay.
and my daughter is 19, and her name is Grace.
It's great. So they must then also have been part of your journey in a way and must have been somewhat challenged with it in trying to help and assist and so that likely how did that experience go for them?
Mhm.
It likely made you stronger together as you went through the challenges along the way. Share that with us because a lot of people like you, and even if
Mhm.
they are not younger, I'm not saying that you're beautiful, obviously, but you're already said that you're in your 50s or somewhere early
Mhm.
50s. Yeah. So that how did that journey take place? Because a lot of people are there that for you you were already well advanced in your middle age to when
Mhm.
you go through the healing process that
Mhm.
take us through that and what role did your both your daughter and your son play in that, and
Mhm.
obviously they are still very, very important even today.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. I know it was very difficult for them to watch me spiral and be out of control. Um, it was scary for them, and them being without me for a month while I'm away at rehab. I mean, that turned my daughter's life, who was still in school, turned her life upside down. But I think mostly they were just very concerned that I was going to be okay. They
Yeah,
didn't know if I was going to be around and,
exactly.
like alive. And
Yeah,
so that breaks my heart because you don't want to hurt the people you care about, you
no,
know? But they were my fuel because on the days that I didn't feel like getting up and fighting the good fight, I would think of them, and they make that worthwhile.
sure. So,
Yeah.
obviously the counseling, when you started that 3 years ago, you knew you were on a crossroad, right?
Oh,
That
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Well, I knew. I mean, it's not normal for people to want to do drugs to basically slowly kill and hurt themselves. That's
no,
just not normal. There
no,
has to be a reason why.
yeah,
What are you running from?
exactly.
What is driving the behavior to even experiment with drugs? I mean, no one goes into it thinking they're going to be addicted and, spend all their money and, completely destroy their whole lives. I mean, that's not the intention.
No,
The intention is just to find some relief because in my skin, I was miserable and very depressed, very misguided, very misunderstood, um, and just had this enduring rage that was in me that kind of scared me. Like I knew I had a rage, I just didn't know the scope of my rage. And, a lot of that goes back to your childhood experiences because
exactly.
you can't deal with it then. So you
No,
compartmentalize it,
yeah,
put it in a box, throw it in the back of your brain, and then everything gets filtered through it the rest of your life until you unpack it.
exactly,
So, therapy is the process of unpacking it and being vulnerable and being honest with yourself and the people in your life and just getting real about, again, why you do the things you do.
exactly. So
Hmm.
the key is to find therapy or counseling, or so men traditionally
Hmm.
don't like to consider counseling or admit that they have had counseling. I did, and I'm very
Hmm.
open about it. And, so it was
Yeah.
helpful to me at some stages in my life. But for a lot of people, it isn't. And I'm convinced, as you are, that there are a lot of people now that are doing drugs to the extent that they know this is not going in a good direction for many
Hmm.
reasons, in terms of relationships, in terms of all the careers, jobs, finance, everything, that it is just a
Right.
spiral going down. At
Mhm.
how then do you get the courage to say, I need help here? And so for males, traditionally, that doesn't come easy. And then,
Hmm.
but you did, and, and then still having the support of both Sheldon and Craze there. I believe I have the names correct. So
Hmm.
that was important.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I just to give you kind of a quick analogy, and I hear it because there are a lot of people that are hesitant to seek help, right? Because it's like something's wrong with you and you got to
Yeah,
go fix it. But
exactly.
that's not really the case. And I liken it to the fact that if I was ever going to take a safari in Africa, am I just going to like fly over there, rent a Jeep, and start blazing through the safari like I know what the hell I'm doing. Of course not. You're not going to do that on your own. You're going to go, you're going to talk to the people that know the land, that understand where the wild animals are and how to get there and how to be safe. You're going to have a guide, right, to maximize that experience. Well, that's all a therapist is. They're a guide who understands the landscape of psychoanalysis and that can help guide you through the terrain so that you have the best experience that you can with it. And and it's certainly not a weakness. I think it should be mandatory for everyone because there's so much benefit. And the people that have done it, I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's gone to therapy and was really disappointed in it.
Exactly. And then the other part is, as you said, is that I cannot see anybody, that has this addiction to cocaine or whatever it may be, to the extent that
Mhm.
they already know the spiral is downward. It is not a
Mhm.
question if nothing good will come from it. We know that already for sure. It may be very temporary feeling of whatever, or you're
Pain.
hiding something that will then disappear for a very short period. But so to build the courage to understand where do you go, how do you go about it to mentally get ready for it? Do you beforehand share that with? And I'm speaking not so much about you. You did it well. You were successful, but sharing it with so many others around the
Mhm.
world that may be watching us in this program, and some of
Mhm.
it is very difficult a lot of times. But sharing it with them is saying, find that, find that way of counsel, even if it just is the initial start that then will
Mhm.
bring you further in saying you have to get out of that spiral going downward. And so that's the courage. And I don't know, we should be more open about it. The
Mhm.
in a general sense, you are, I am, and hopefully others will be hearing our podcasting around the world. But I believe the frequency of occurrence is more when I grew up, even in Holland, which tends to be very
Mhm.
liberal, actually. Uh, I never even
Mhm.
thought about drugs. It was not part of my life,
Mhm.
so I had lots of
Mhm.
other issues, but, so in here, but more and more we see frequency of occurrence of drugs and other things, that are not very good and healthy for you, there appears to be a lack of understanding.
Mhm.
How do we get to the point, in particular, with younger people and persons, as they go
Mhm.
through challenges along the way, which everybody does in some form or fashion? How do we help them and finding counseling or understanding of how to make things go in the right direction?
Mhm. Well, I think it's important to point out that addiction takes many forms. It's not just, alcohol or cocaine or meth or heroin. There's shopping, there's working, there's gambling. There's all kinds of addictions and all kinds of ways that people will engage themselves to run or suppress whatever it is they're trying to avoid dealing with. And I think the way we insulate our children against some of those perils is by allowing them to have the freedom to talk about how they feel and not make them feel judged for it. And listen to them, validate them, encourage them to express themselves, not just get lost in a phone with dopamine hits every 5 seconds. They need to be talking to you, they need to be engaging with you and connecting with you. And hopefully, just by talking about it, we're destigmatizing a lot of these things so people will be more inclined to engage either their partners or their children or their friends in these kinds of conversations and normalize it. not the behavior, but normalize the conversations around it.
Yeah, I believe that is very, very important, Lynette. And again, looking at myself, looking back to failing, and that's why I brought it up, the background there, seeing the warriors, for one, sawing
Mm-hmm.
fundamentals we should not have seen. And the point that I'm making there is that being exposed to trauma in some form or fashion will
Mm-hmm.
stay with even a young person, 4 or 5 years old, it will stay with them in some form unless they reconcile it in some form or fashion, in some form. And then obviously schooling, then which was a direct result of ADHD, likely are
Mm-hmm.
neurodiversity issues, that, but being basically told that John will not amount to much, always kind of stayed with me in a way, although I knew that if that I would be just as smart as any of the others that went on to colleges, university, and other places, and obviously starting over new again to the land of my heroes here, and building lumber mills and all of this other kinds that I've done is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it became the most important. But the lack of confidence probably was a big part of my life. Is saying, who am I? Who am I? And why am I having these challenges along the way? And
Mm-hmm.
so the lack of confidence took me a long time before I got saying I'm okay, So and it took uh, the this one here, driven to distraction and finding out about ADHD, that the I believe the more I found out about it, I call it a superpower. And a lot of people say to me now, how do you do all the things that you do? You got 10 different companies and you're writing books, you're working on my sixth one, and you're doing presentation and doing podcast. How do you do it all? I say ADHD, that's how I do it. So, but the most
Exactly.
important part is that and then I love what I'm doing, and that's maybe another part about it is that I do quite a bit of presenting to younger people, either at high schools, colleges, or universities, and I found that what I heard on one of the radio stations in the United States is that 75% of the people that work in the United States, Canada is the same, I believe, don't like their jobs. And probably
Mm-hmm.
70% of that 75% are looking for another job. And so what I usually say if I give a presentation somewhere is, and I wrote a book about that, is this one here, Finding Your Passion, Living the
Mm-hmm.
Dream. And so what I'm saying is that to people that I give presentations to is saying, what are you going to do after you finish the school? You say, I don't know. I said, start looking at what would you like to do. You want to be a truck driver? Talk to truck drivers. See what they're doing. Should I own the truck? Should it be long haul, short haul, whatever? Or you want to be a builder of or an electrician? Talk to people that are electricians and electrical workers or contractors, and see whether it works and how to do it, or a contractor, or you want to be a lawyer or an accountant, or or for that matter, an entrepreneur, like myself. Come talk to somebody like that. They would love to talk to you and give you some ideas if you're careful with the time, and saying, I'd like to have a coffee with you and get some ideas of what to do. And because the objective is find your passion, which direction should I go, and then because the rest of your life you will likely be in a direction where you're doing something, and if you like it and you're good at it, you will become successful. And so that's why I wrote the
Right.
book and saying finding your passion, living the dream. And for myself, at 12 and a half years old, I became a laborer, and so
Mm-hmm.
now I'm 85. For 73 years, I've been working in lumber mainly, and other businesses and entrepreneurial, and saying, hey, John, are you living the dream? I am. Every day to me is a special day. And when I wake up, I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And, so, and going through all the challenges and up and down. But the other part about it, which was important for me, is saying that have that confidence. Still
Mhm.
looking back to the early years when there was too much trauma, to the
Mhm.
schooling that was kind of implying won't amount to much, those things stick
Mhm.
with you. And it's like you said,
Mhm.
baggage that you take with you. And unless you reconcile it at some point, then it can and it will, in some form, affect your life. And confidence is extremely important. And then the other part that I believe is important, and what I see a lot of times is male and females, is they don't feel this is not right, that is not quite right, and with males and females, and the way I'm dressing is not right, and this and
Mhm.
that, is saying that, which I believe there is only one of you, and you are special. Not better than, but you are special. Be who you are, and then create that confidence, and then do whatever you do it well. And then the other parts that are important to me is give back to your community,
Mhm.
be involved, but create that confidence that you're not
Mhm.
necessarily special, but you are okay and you're just as good as anybody else, and opportunities are there for you, you know.
Absolutely. No, those are very wise words, and that's what you've lived. So that's pretty extraordinary.
So as you go forward now, then, Lynette, so
Mhm.
where do you go from here? You know, you have an amazing story. Obviously, you're active in, you know, the podcasting, and which I call
Mhm.
the new media. You know,
Mhm.
it started not all that long ago, and now obviously, as we speak, it is exploding throughout the world,
Mhm.
and because of
Right.
technology, it's available there. We can sit here and podcast, and people from around the world can be watching us and
Mhm.
sharing their ideas and inspiration, hopefully from us, that everything is possible and everything can be done, and to be at peace with who they are and where did you go from
Mhm.
here, you know.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So have you thought in terms of, you do probably
Mhm.
already do some speaking, public speaking, and obviously you're active
Mhm.
on podcasting, and
Mhm.
I found it very rewarding for me, satisfying for me, is that a lot of people said to me a long time ago, they said, what you should do is write a book. And so for 20 years, I tried to write a book, and writing books is not easy. And so
Mm-mm.
I would go through it and then stop and go through it again. And then about 6, 7 years ago, when I was already in my 70s, I said, if I don't do it now, it will not happen. So I started doing this one. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2.5 years to write it, against all odds. And it's not about how successful John is, just the opposite, actually, going through all the ups and downs, you know.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent. I like
So
that. But yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to write my book myself. I literally put pen to paper and I'm just writing out like different thoughts, different scenarios, different stories as I think of them, and I'll bring them all together at some point. But that is definitely a goal of mine, is to get the book published and share it with as many people as I can.
yeah, because it's so unique, you know. By doing that, I find it very satisfactory, for even from my perspective, and
Mhm.
so I like that, do that, and it is healing in a way. And then the other part,
Mhm.
obviously, for me, is important to podcast
Right.
around the world, and that's still evolving as we speak. You know, where
Mhm.
the traditional media, the CNNs, the ABCs, and all the other ones in Canada, CBC and UK BBC, blah blah blah. All the other ones are reducing in viewers. The same with newspapers, where this podcasting has become much more opening up, it's still very much at the beginning, but it is global. And, so what I'm doing with my podcast, I do it unique on all kinds of different topics, not all relating to issues that we talked about, but also anything else, that I find interesting. And then the other part that I do in my podcast, they're usually around an hour or so, and then I release them within 2 hours. I do not edit them. It is what it is, and so and and that makes my podcast unique.
I like that. I will keep that in mind. That's a great way to do it.
So
Mhm.
as we coming towards the end, so what can you share with our viewers from around the world in terms of challenging and all kind of looking at it, the stay the course, the
Mhm.
you you had a gift in your life is with Sheldon and Grace, that
Mhm.
stayed the course with you, that have been,
Mhm.
a major impact on your life. So what
Mhm.
would you leave with the people watching us that are struggling and have challenges?
Mhm. I would leave them with this, and it's something I reflect on a lot, especially during the bad times, but also during the good times, for that matter, is to remember that this too shall pass. I think a lot of times we get really stuck in a quagmire of despair and we forget we're not always going to feel like this. It's not always going to be like this. This too shall pass and it will get better. It will improve. The light will return. But you can't lose sight of that in the moments of despair that you have. You just have to remember that this too shall pass.
And then stay positive. So what I
Oh,
usually
absolutely.
say, for me, my foundation is attitude, passion,
Hmm.
work ethic,
Hmm.
but will follow is success. And then
Mm.
give back to the community wherever you can, because that is very rewarding, for one, for obviously the community as they have people involved, but
Mhm.
even individuals like ourselves. And I already did that when I was young in Holland, and learned that in a way that that part is important. I do that here in British Columbia and in northern BC in particular, but but also throughout BC, and obviously I do the same in my podcasting.
It's wonderful. You're right. There is a key component there because it's like we spend so much of our life learning. You want other people to benefit from that knowledge. You don't want to keep it all to yourself. It's important to educate and share and communicate with the others. Absolutely.
So the other part about it, and I usually ask my guest, Lannette, have you
Mhm.
got, if people want to contact you or be in touch with you, have you got an interest in doing that? And if so, have you got a
For
website?
sure.
Yeah, have you got a website
For
that you
sure.
can share with us?
Yeah, it's under construction, but it's LanetteWest.com. And then the easiest way to reach me is on Instagram. I'm at Lannette, Lannette dot West, West. And I'm happy to, converse through DMs and even email. I'm at Lannette.west at yahoo.com. So any of those ways you could reach me.
And then the other part for people watching us to and subscribe to our podcast if you like what we are doing, and I'm doing,
Mhm.
and Lannette will be doing as well. And then share it with others and like it if you like it, or make suggestions if you can, and so that will stimulate this as we go forward. Lannette, it
Mhm.
was an amazing podcast. I love staying in touch with you, and as you go forward, let's make sure we stay in touch as you go through the process of working on your books and your book. I probably can give you some ideas about the challenges that I went through, but it's very
Mhm.
rewarding as you go forward. And so let's make sure we stay in touch. And maybe what I should
Absolutely.
do is I want to send
Mhm.
you You are, I'm going to send you some of the copies of my books that I have as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege to meet with you and spend this time with you, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Lannette. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.